Hey everybody, welcome back to A Cast of the Past, where best friends get together to talk about old games in a new light and sometimes give you a top 5 list. Today is one of those days. I'm Josh.
And I'm Tom.
And Tom, today, yes, like I said, we are going to be doing a top 5 list. Now, usually we do top 10s, but there isn't a super amount of these things that we're going to be doing a list about. So narrowing it down to 5 just made it a little bit more difficult, I think, for us. A little bit more, romantic, a little bit more intimate. We got to get in there and understand why we chose these 5 things. Now, what are these 5 things, though?
We are talking about our 5 picks, personal picks for the best gaming controllers.
Now,
what we think is the best way to experience a game and how said controller enhances the overall packaged deal.
Yeah, so we're not talking about like this is the best alternative style controller, like a special edition controller, or this is the best looking controller or anything like that. We're talking about how does it feel? How does it make you feel?
How is it ergonomically designed? Are the buttons where they need to be? Do we think that the controller is meaty enough to survive a throw at the wall from a rage quit? Like all the basics, all the core skeletal pieces you need to enjoy a game. Does this controller take you there?
Right.
And that's what we're going to be diving right into.
It could be a colored version of it if you think about it. Because like if this is a controller that came with a console. So if you bought a special edition console, for instance, I have my PlayStation 4 Spider-Man one. It's a cool red one, but it's still just a base PlayStation 4 controller with some colors to it. But we're going to talk about the base.
We're not going to sit here and try to convince you that, the Resident Evil 4 chainsaw controller is a masterpiece. We want to look at the actual core controller of a console and be like, does it work?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Josh, the Steel Battalion controller does not mix because that is not a base controller.
Cool ass controller, but not going to be talked about. So Josh, jumping right into it, I would like to give you leave to begin the list. What's your 5th recommendation for awesome controllers?
We're going to go back in time like we normally do in this podcast.
In time.
Bam! And we are going to be going into the 80s because I will be choosing number 5 to be the Nintendo Entertainment System controller. You got a D-pad.
Expected.
And you got 2 buttons. And if you count the start and select button, you have 4 control buttons technically. But you got A, B, and the D-pad. And this is really the console that revealed the D-pad to the world. Like
a lot of previous consoles, like with the Atari, they went all in on that joystick, and a classic kind of concept and an obvious kind of concept. But a D-pad lets you be a lot more precise.
Yeah, I mean, what controller nowadays really doesn't have a D-pad to it? You
and if you don't have a good one, you get so much flack for it.
Look at the Switch. But then they go ahead and they put it on their Pro controller. But the D-pad was created with this controller. Like it's something that's universally known now all across, electronics and entertainment and gaming and media and anything. Like you look at it and you're like, that's a D-pad. And it came from this controller. But it's a rectangle that feels so comfortable in your hands. It's so weird. Like, how does something just rectangular and boxy and sharp edges feel so comfortable? And the concave buttons to it as well. So your fingers can easily go from running to jumping on, when you're playing Mario, or, what button you're pressing at all times just because of the way these buttons feel. And I think it's a great controller. And it's a nice looking controller as well. That gray with the black and red to it.
I expected this, and I can't argue with it. It's iconic for a reason. It set so many standards, and the way it was built upon has just left an indelible mark on gaming history. Easy pick, totally down with it. Agreed.
But now what is so low on your list that could be shocking?
Well, I am going to say something that may cause you to faint, but my number 5 is actually, honestly, a keyboard and mouse. I did not grow up a PC gamer because my parents did not let me play PC games. But I've really in the past like 2-ish years, 3-ish maybe, as friends have introduced me to things like Overwatch and Stellaris and a wealth of other interesting PC games. I've really gotten an affection down for this system, and this is a super varied one because it's not like there's only one kind of PC that comes with one kind of keyboard, but this is the only time on the list I'm going to talk about user customization and how that's a good thing. It's just the variability of letting anyone, based on their comfort level or maybe another kind of consideration that a gamer may have on an individual level, this can accommodate it for you. And when it's designed well, like, don't get me wrong, I think there are games that play best on consoles and a keyboard and mouse is not an acceptable substitute for a controller. But when it works, it works. And when you can tailor it to what you want, I think that's a positive thing. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge it at the bottom of my list and talk about how I've come to see that it is a force for good, despite how much ragging I would do over the years.
It is a good choice. It's a shocking choice because I was thinking mainly just consoles because, PCs are not consoles because they are the lowest form of gaming.
Got to get that salt back in. No, but yeah.
But yeah, you touch on customization, and that's something that's huge now in gaming. It's really hard to find a game where you can't customize your controllers. I mean, the latest update with the Switch actually utilizes so you can customize the buttons to however you would want. I know Xbox took over with the adaptive controlling so that anybody can play a game any way.
Adaptive controller, I think, is one of the greatest forces for good in gaming history. I
absolutely
love that it exists.
But for sitting down and keyboard and mouse having pretty much hundreds of buttons at your disposal, depending on how crazy of a mouse that you want, or mouse and keyboard, because mice can have 36 buttons onto them now. I think it is a good choice for it, and it is. I always get lost when I'm on a keyboard. I'm like, shit, like where the hell W? I have to look down at my hands and stuff like that. But it's like, I get it. If you grew up with it nonstop, and I played PCs games for a long period of time before I jumped back over into consoles. It is. The customization is really what makes these two things perfect.
Thank you for completely validating everything I said.
Yeah.
But no, moving on. I promise it'll be console based from here. So, but Josh, I need to hear what's number 4? Lead us along, please. You are number 4.
Number 4 is the best controller to play PC games with.
And that is,
ladies and gentlemen, number 4 is the Xbox 360 controller. Ooh. And you could say the wired one, you could say the wireless one. They both control exactly the same. I think the handling to these controllers is great. The way that they fit in your hand is perfectly fine. The button response to them, they're not overly big, unlike the Duke was. It was something that felt comfortable and felt right. And the fact that if you got the wired one, plug it right into your computer and boom, you got a USB controller for your computer. So it acted as a 2-in-1. You don't need to worry about all the excess of loading up memory cards in the top of your controller. You didn't need to worry about the black and white buttons. You got the dual bumpers now. So you have your triggers and then your right and left bumpers. The controller felt great. It was pretty lightweight. And I mean, it looked nice. I'm a huge fan of the Xbox controller just because I think offset thumbsticks are the best way to go when it comes to gaming. I think it feels the most comfortable in it. But I think the Xbox 360 is the best controller that you can use on the PC and one of the best controllers made.
I agree, but I cannot go any further into detail why for reasons. So just move along.
Okay. Well, we should move it on to your number 4, Tom.
Yes, a new one, but I think its impressiveness should be noted. It is the Switch Pro controller, which I think is honestly the best way to play Switch games, period. If this is an option for playing it, you should be using it. The Joy-Cons, in concept and in most execution, are delightful and great, and I think they're very cute, but the D-pad's lacking. The controllers are a little fragile. You know, I have had to clean mine out a ton, and Joy-Con drift. Everyone, I'm going through it. I think Animal Crossing probably exacerbated the problem for a lot of people. But the Pro controller, it is sturdy. It's well designed. Its button ergonomics are fantastic. The D-pad on this thing is a joy to use. It makes playing any kind of side-scrolling or maybe top-down game just like effortless. Probably the best D-pad in gaming console controller history, possibly. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But the buttons being rounded and raised up give them a really effortless and effective feel, like you know what you're tapping and it just feels good and it's very responsive. And the textured handles make the grip feel like super comfortable and just secure. Like it's something that you honestly just enjoy getting a good long session in holding it. Very delightful, very good design, and the fact that it still incorporates some motion options. You don't get like the full range of things that the Joy-Cons can do individually, but if you're say playing Mario Kart, a nice flick up of the Pro controller gets you your jumps. It's good for things like that. There's still some gyroscopic control features built in. So like, if you're using the Switch Pro controller on a PC, which you can do via Bluetooth, there's certain games that you can even get gyroscopic options out of on that. So Switch Pro controller, pretty dang good. I have to give it a what's up on my list.
Yeah, it is good. It has not made my list. I'll tell you that right now.
It's fine.
I will say the D-pad is really well made on that controller. That is the controller that I used to play Celeste for the first time with. And if you know anything about Celeste, it is pixel perfect platforming. And the best way to do the best way to do platforming is really with a D-pad, so you can get that precision as you're going through.
I started playing Celeste on the Switch. I was playing it handheld in Joy-Con mode, and after a while, I was kind of like, "Argh!" And I have been playing it docked with the Pro controller since, because it does allow you to get those tight and precise jumps down a lot more often.
Yep. So Celeste, The Messenger, Hollow Knight, all games I played on the Switch with the Pro controller using the D-pad, because it did feel great with those type of platformers. So a tip of the hat.
Yes, sir. Okay, Josh. Three's Company, I guess. Please give me your number 3. It's the best pun I'm going to give you for this.
Well, number 3 is one that caused many, many blisters to people. But it's really the only way to play Super Smash Brothers.
Oh, okay.
And that is the Nintendo GameCube controller. The controller that just won't die.
Never.
It really won't. It's almost 20 years now, and they're still producing them because people demand to use those for Smash Brothers or for Mario Kart or for any type of Nintendo game. And I'm surprised that the Pro controller just wasn't an offshoot of the GameCube controller for the most part, because people really do act like it is. It's like the second coming of Christ when they release a new GameCube controller. Like, it really is. People are like, oh my God, I'm playing with my GameCube controller on my Switch, or I'm playing with it on my Wii U, or I'm playing with it on my Wii, or that controller lasted 4 generations of consoles. And it's still being released and produced. And you can go to Best Buy right now and buy a 4-pack of GameCube controllers. Wired or wireless. Correct? Yeah. Or you can buy the Nintendo ones, which are wired. Like, that controller will not die. Unless you get the Waveberg.
I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. Yeah, no. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. My number 3, it's also the GameCube controller. So let's just get in on this together. It is a survivor, as you said, for a reason. It is uniquely designed in the best way. It looks a little cartoonish and almost kind of like a Mad Catz little kid controller, maybe, when you look at it.
It does.
Like, think about just the logic behind the button placement. The most commonly used button in almost any video game. Make that the biggest, most easy to reach button. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Exactly. It's the jump button in almost any platformer. It's like the confirm button in almost any menu assignment. make that the centerpiece that your thumb rests on. Genius. And then the way the B, X, and Y float around it, like your thumb just kind of naturally goes from one to one to one. The design is just, it's so good. And I think that's the appeal of it. You know what I mean? Like you said, for Smash Brothers, with A, that's your standard and smash attacks. And if you're, as long as you're not spamming your specials, that's what you're going to be focusing most of your strategy around. So of course it makes it a good controller for that. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And you brought it up before I jumped in, the Wavebird. Can we talk about like the Wavebird, the first perfect wireless controller? I'm just going to say it. I'm going to claim it.
I mean, it really was like it, because we had wireless controllers all the way back at the NES time frame and the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, and they just never worked the way that they should have. And then knock, 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 here comes the Wavebird, this big, kind of bulky controller. It was kind of bulky, but it didn't hinder your experience playing any game on the GameCube or the Wii.
I have a Wavebird that is at least 18 years old, and I still have cleaner and more consistent wireless gameplay functionality from it than I have with some of my Xbox One controllers now. You know what I mean? It's RF. I assume it's RF sensors in the base that respond with the receiver, which you plug into your console. They communicate so cleanly. There is very little interruption, and I think you get about a 30-foot range out of it. That's incredible for 2002-ish when that came out. It's just very good. And the rest of the GameCube's just design elements, like I said, the D-pad, great D-pad, very comfortable and easy to reach sticks. Like there's not a button I have a problem getting to. It's a good ass controller.
The only problem I ever run into with GameCube controllers is the Z button sometimes sticks.
Okay.
On some of my controllers.
Okay.
And the C button can get really loose at times. The C analog stick.
I think both of those are probably a measure of just wear and tear.
I was going to say, the majority of my GameCube controllers I've had since OG. Like I've had them all since like originally. I don't think I've ever gotten rid of a GameCube controller. So I have like a mass hoard of them back in my storage room.
Yeah, and like the thing is, don't, because just because Nintendo releases them doesn't mean that they're actually steadily available. Official Nintendo GameCube controllers do disappear quite frequently.
Right.
So hang on to them.
So number 2.
Yeah, you cool if I'm going right to number 2, even though I kind of tag teamed in on 3?
No, yeah, I would say if you want to jump to number 2, then yeah.
All right. Thank you. You're such a gracious man. I appreciate it. And I'm about to talk about what I think is a gracious controller, a generous controller. The Xbox 360. I think that this is a chunky boy, don't get me wrong, but I think its design is ingenious for its era. And talk about an upgrade. As controllers have evolved, like Nintendo's evolution is usually all over the place. You never know what they're going to do next. But Xbox, compared to Sony, who just for the PlayStation 3, it was like, it's the last one. But now there's a PlayStation button on it. With 360, it was like, okay, everyone was upset by our controller. I mean, most people were upset. I'm sure the Xbox faithful of Gen 1 adapted to it. But the Duke had dozens of problems. And even when they made the slim version of it, that black and white secondary button placement being moved up to shoulder bumpers, so much better. So much better. The D-pad, in my opinion, that's the best Xbox D-pad we've had, short of an Xbox One Elite controller. You know what I mean? One that the best D-pad you don't have to spend over $100 on.
Right.
And the Jewel, I think the Xbox 360's menu jewel is probably the best implementation to this day of like a menu button on a controller. I think with the Xbox One, making it like, what's the kind of phrase? Just like flush with the face of the controller kind of makes it like easy to miss sometimes. And I don't know, the way like PlayStation and Nintendo have like messed with home and menu buttons, it's just never felt as intuitive as like that big, distinct, appealing looking jewel that you instantly float your thumb over like a little dome, and it's like, boom, I'm going to the menu, boom, it's instantaneous. These are small things, but
yeah,
they're things that matter, in use. And I really admire the Xbox 360 controller. I think it's well designed. I think it is got a wide range of stuff. As you mentioned, it can be easily plugged in and used as a PC controller, so you've got more options there. It's just wonderful. It's very good. I don't think people give it enough credit. It's good. It's a good thing.
So going back and talking about the original Xbox controller, yes,
Sure.
the Duke was a bulky boy, right?
Good
But
boy.
the second generation of like re-releases of the original Xbox, they had another controller come out, which what we're talking about though is the Duke came out with the console. So the Duke would be the one for the original Xbox. The re-release controller for the Xbox was a much smaller controller, and you can see it almost morphing into that Xbox 360 controller. It was the same like weight, it was the same kind of design, but it was more still that military rugged, like sharp edge, like
Oh yeah, yeah.
look to it that they had, which was still a great controller, but man, did they polish it and make it more smooth, and just like how soft it is to touch a Xbox 360 controller too. It's not a like hefty piece of plastic. It's a very smooth and relaxing holding type device. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great hand feel, great design. I just like it a lot. All right, Josh, what is your runner-up, your silver medal? Hit me with it.
ooh, my number 2 controller is the PlayStation 4 controller.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
it was originally much lower on my list of controllers, but after playing The Last of Us and Last of Us 2 more recently, that controller has become more comfortable in my hands. I think the analog sticks that they use, they have this weird like rubberized grip to them that almost make it a little bit like too soft to play with, which is very relaxing though, because it's like you can feel like your finger movements are like, if you're going really soft, it reacts to it. If you're going really fast or really hard or trying to make a quick turn or something like that, it's reacting to it. It's a very sensitive style analog stick. And I'm not a huge fan of those analog sticks being so damn close to each other, but I will give praise to the sacred symbols, which is your triangle, square, circle, and cross. And it gave you, it's the first controller that deleted the start button. Start button doesn't exist anymore. All right.
Mhm.
We have our
What
we
is
have our
it?
menu.
It's share.
Yep. We
Oh,
have our
menu.
menu
Okay.
and we have share, where you can instantly go and share your stuff on any of your social media platforms by the press of one button. The fact that it has a touchscreen interface in the middle of the controller itself too is a very nice feature. It's not used for many games, but it is a very nice feature. The light bar on the back of it works with certain games. You don't need to have it on if you don't want to, because it will drain your battery, but it is nice indicator. So for instance, if you're playing, let's say Resident Evil 2, and you are at full health, the light bar is green. You get bit a couple times, your light bar will turn yellow, and it'll turn red to signify and let you know, without having to look at the game's menu stuff, that your character is slowly dying. The fact that it has a speaker built inside of it too that can react to what you're playing in the game. If you're listening to audio logs in the game, it might come through the speaker on the controller itself. The fact that you can plug a headphone set in the bottom of that controller and listen to the game and talk to people if you have a microphone built into it, instantaneous. The fact that it's Bluetooth enabled is a great piece that you can just plug it up to any Bluetooth device. If you want to hook it up to a phone, you can. Hook it up to your computer, you can. There's so many great things to that controller. The D-pad, not one of those, but there's a lot of great features in this thing, in this controller. And that's why the PlayStation 4 controller deserves to be number 2.
All right. It is a controller I respect in the few instances that I have gotten to play with it. I have, just to be honest with you, an issue with the little touch screen enabled square on the front, in that, as you said, it's not used a ton. And I think that's a problem because it's such a large piece of the real estate on the controller itself. And to not have it be used consistently makes it feel like a little bit of a waste, just in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of a design flaw there. But I like the lights. I beyond like usage in the games in cool ways, which you mentioned, they're also a super handy way of like just identifying whose controller is which. You know what I mean? Like if you have 4 black PlayStation 4 controllers and you're playing a game with friends, like Josh, you're green, I'm red, Mary's blue, and Becca's yellow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the lights are just gonna like hold
Yeah.
on to it for us. Yeah, good. That's just a good common sense thing. I do like the concave, kind of. I don't, maybe concave wasn't the right word, but the way that the joysticks on it, like
Yeah, they're
it's good.
concave.
Got good,
They
good
go in a way.
hand feel. Is what
Yeah.
yeah, is what I'm saying. Like it feels good and natural. I was a little bit critical earlier, and I'm gonna be critical. Just like I feel like Sony's kind of policy has been, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and they've mostly stuck to that, and I think with decent amount of success. But this was one where like where the fix, was these sharing integration buttons and a little mix, but otherwise good controller. I'm this is like backhanded compliments. I like it.
Yeah, no,
it's a
well,
good
it's
controller.
trying to take the PS3 controller, which the PS3 controller is a great controller, but it was pretty much a PS2 controller, just much lighter and had motion controls built inside of it, which the PlayStation
Which is
4
funny.
controller does too.
Which is funny that the PlayStation 3 controller arguably had more tech in it, and yet it was lighter, because those things do feel very flimsy, the PS3 controller.
Yeah.
I feel like I might break it at any point.
But going back to like the ability, like it just adapted to the times though. Like now we are in the age of social media. So why can't we just activate it right from our one button on our controller? Instantly go to stream on Twitch or YouTube or anything. Like I think it was a great change from something that was pretty stale for a while.
I agree. They were thinking forward to the future. 100% on that one.
So Tom, what is your number one? The final
top dog.
The top one.
Well, we're in the Sony family conversation, so I'm just going to stick with it. The DualShock 2 for the PlayStation 2. I personally think this is the peak of PlayStation controller design to date. We'll have to see what the DualSense does for us with the PS5. But, this is where they got the formula 100%, and I think it is just, it's lightweight, but it feels substantial. You know what I mean? You're holding this, the uniformity of the button placement from end to end is this really nice and appealing layout. And I agree with you what you said up top. What was the phrase you used? Control sticks that are too close. You use the phrase for it. Like you prefer the Xbox because they're
offset.
Offset. Thank you. Yes, I would overall say that offset control stick placement is superior, but I have just a lot of experience from my high school years of playing PS2 games, and I kind of just have like a natural kind of muscle memory that goes down to it, because even though it's different than what used to be the standard, it still feels good. You know what I mean? The D-pad on that, really great. That's something I wanted to talk about. Like anytime I was playing like a retro collection on the PS2, like Mega Man or Sonic, the D-pad was a great way to experience those buttons. Just felt effortless. I feel like, because this predated the original Xbox, so this was the first controller to have clickable sticks, right? Did you have were the thumbsticks and L3 and R3 when it was the DualShock on the PS1? Because I don't know personally.
No, they weren't in PS1.
All right, so
not that I can remember, but yeah,
introducing clickable sticks to add more button functionality, which has gone a long way in gaming history. To be 100% honest with you, and everything, it feels so satisfying. Like I said, it's the uniformity that makes it appealing, knowing instantly where you need to go, but like also feeling like this mirror kind of feedback and sensitivity on it. The D-pad lines up with, like you said, the 4 holy symbols, the easy to reach and easy to instantly engage with shoulders and bumpers. I just love it. It's one of those, it's modernism and minimalism meets their match. It's like almost like the precursor to what we get with Apple nowadays, where it's just, it's simple and uniform, but it's for a purpose. And I think great user interfacing is that purpose. And I just really like the DualShock 2 because of that. That'd be my number one, to be honest with you.
The DualShock 2 is pretty much just the original PlayStation 1 DualShock controller, just forced on you now. where I mean, in the original PlayStation 1, you didn't need it except for Ape Escape, right? Like there was only a couple of games that really utilized it. You can play the first Metal Gear Solid with a D-pad. Is it
Could.
great to handle? No, it's not great to handle that like that. I am not a fan of this controller. I was not a fan of the PS3 controller. I respect them for what they did because, yes, like you said, in the high school years, everybody had PlayStation 2s, right? Like we all had them because one, they were a lot of good games on them, but two, they're a cheap ass DVD player as well.
Exactly.
Like
No, for real.
compared to what DVD players were at the time when we were in there, and I think that's what we all had them. And like my favorite controller for the PlayStation 2 is a Guitar Hero controller because that's what I played Guitar Hero on. Like,
yeah.
but I respect it because it is, PlayStation 2 is one of the top selling consoles of all time. It has the largest gaming library as well, but I don't think it's number one.
No? Okay. What I will say is this, because we've talked about the PS2, we've talked about the PS4. The reason that like the PS3 is not on my list and that I wouldn't say it's better than either is something we briefly touched on. It's lightweight design. Like I've said the phrase hand feel a couple times in this episode, and it's just like when I held a PS3 controller for the first substantial amount of time when I was playing Uncharted for the first time, just something about it felt so
cheap.
I don't know. Cheap. Yeah, to a degree where I was like, I felt like moving something or hitting something on the controller too hard was going to damage it or something.
It almost feels like a third-party controller.
Yeah. It's really why I have to, like, in just my opinion, I get behind the DualShock 2 because it still feels like substantial and weighty. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I will. If I had to do, it would be 4, 2, 3, 1 when it comes to their controllers. So, and we'll see.
Gotcha.
We'll see.
All right. Well, Josh, you ended with PS1, but I need to hear your number one overall. What's this gonna be?
So the most perfect controller is what we're talking about, right? The best analog sticks, the best D-pad, the best button placement, the best hand grips. Oh, and also the best designs that you could get for your controller too.
What is it? What is
that? Is the Xbox One controller. Xbox One controller, I think, is one of the most perfect handheld, aesthetically pleasing controllers made. And I'm not talking about the Elite. I'm not talking about, the Elite 2 or any, the adaptive controller or anything like that. What Microsoft did to perfect that controller, it is one of those things that you put it in your hand, your hands morph to the controller because for how well designed that controller actually is. I think ergonomically that is the most perfect made controller.
Okay. Well, what else do you like about it in the gameplay kind of scenario? Tell me about your opinions of its responsiveness and things like that, because I'd like to hear a little bit more.
No, I think I've never, when we were talking about responsiveness, I've never had any issues with delay or anything like that. The only downfall I could ever see with this controller is depending on what generation of the controller you get, if you need the headphone adapter to it, but that's only if you're ever talking to people and stuff like that. You can plug your normal headsets into it though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. I guess whatever generation I have of it, I can just plug a 3.5 millimeter jack in, and boom, have that connectivity.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm going to hold up and just talk to you about for a bit on is the D-pad. When you were up top, you were saying all these things. I think the Xbox One D-pad is in my opinion very bad. I do not like how stiff it feels, like the clickiness of it. I don't think it's very good for, side-scrolling games or games that would normally benefit from a D-pad. And I don't like how it kind of dips into its center. Whereas the Switch D-pad rises up in a way to kind of meet your thumbs, this recedes from you almost. And I'm not personally into it. And that's why I joked that, the Elite Xbox controller has a better D-pad, but only because I feel like people complained about it enough that they were like, okay, we'll put it on the expensive one, but I I don't get a lot out of that personally. But what do you feel differently?
I like the D-pad. I like that it's kind of built into the controller is the best way to kind of describe it. It's not raised out like you said. I think it's just more comfortable from going from the analog stick there right down. So you're not like, you can drop your thumb down a little bit more. It's more relaxed. And that's what I like about the controller. It is a much more relaxed controller. The fact that it bends a little bit to the back. So when you're sitting down, your hands are kind of rested on your lap rather than being positioned up in the air, hurting your wrist or anything like that. It is a much more relaxed controller because it is a controller that's meant to be made to be comfortable with, to play for a long period of time. And I feel like not a lot of controllers actually have that replay value to them, or longevity, I should say, not replay value. But
Okay.
and that's why I feel like the Xbox One is an amazing controller. But like I said, with the design, right? Design Labs is one of the best things I think any company has ever done. Now, it doesn't come with the console, but it is the same controller. And I think that is just a wonderful added feature that you can get to these controllers.
Can you, for any listeners who may not know, just explain Design Labs really quick? I wasn't going to bring it up, but go for it.
You can order a customized controller of your liking. You can customize every color of the controller. You can add personalized messages if you want to put your gamer tag on it, or a message to somebody, or anything along those lines. You can do it. Like, it is one of just the coolest creative things, and it's so simple. It's just like, hey, you like our controller? Let's make one specifically for you.
I agree completely. I turned my microphone off so I could go to the Design Labs website and look at it. It is a controller customization like suite that I have always been tempted to jump into and mess around with and maybe make my own.
How much are they? How much is it?
Well, I'm on the front page, so we have Xbox Design Lab. There's actually a pre-made color pattern that they're releasing in September in celebration of Rare. So it's got like a blue and black bleeding gradient on the front with a yellow D-pad and like a gold yellow D-pad and gold yellow shoulder buttons. So it looks like the Rareware logo you would see at the top of like Donkey Kong Country or GoldenEye. This is $88.
So a normal controller is $60. So you're spending an extra $29 like to get a customized controller.
Yeah, what I'm seeing in the pricing of how this one's designed, well, I'll just explain it real quick. So a standard solid color paint job is $70. But if you want to have a color gradient, a color fading or bleeding between one color and another, that's $80. And then this controller has rubberized grips around the section where you would put your palm, and that's an additional $6. So that's what bumps the price up on this real quick. If you just have a standard controller with no grips, your price will go down. Yeah. So color options, pattern options, comfort options. You're gonna get what you pay for. You might pay a lot, but you'll get a controller tailored the way you like it. So
and that's one awesome thing though. Like we talk about customize to your gaming style. And the fact that you can create your own controller, like out of this normal controller, because nothing really is changing in the controller design other than just the color. But
$10 for the engraving, up to 16 characters.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Oof. I'm looking at and like and it comes with a lot of just kind of like introductory palettes. It's like, here's an idea. Start off with this, and then maybe customize it how you want from there. Oh, I'm going to fall into a black hole tonight, Josh. But yeah, so those were our picks. But hey, tell us what you think. What controllers enhance your gaming experiences and have guided you through years of adventures? Tell us in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree with any of ours? Heavily disagree with any of ours? We'd love to talk to you about it.
Yes, and until next time, this has been Josh
and Tom,
and we'll see you in the future. Well, that's all the time that we can spend in the past, so thanks for listening. Subscribe to A Cast of the Past on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And stay up to date with The Cast of the Past by making sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There you can be the first to know when new episodes drop, as well as joining in on discussions on all things gaming. And until next time, we'll see you in the future.